Well, hello out there, doll fans, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, basically I sit and talk about dolls. Sometimes it's Barbie, sometimes it's Illy, sometimes it's Monster High, sometimes it's a Disney princess, you get the point. My name is Daniel, and I am the Barbie book boy. Today, I would like to talk about
Madeline.
Just kidding. Now, today I would like to talk about a couple of cheeky little playline dolls, which I think might be surprising to people who don't understand my particular doll collecting journey, but I've got two kooky little kids here with me that are gonna help with that today. And they are Ariel and Swag. Now here's the thing, these dolls were cheap. This Ariel doll was like $11. And you can see here that I got Swag on clearance for $8. And I find that anytime I make purchases like this, it inevitably perplexes those around me who I think have probably misinterpreted my doll collecting hobby. Because I have found that one of the things people always want to know when they find out that I'm a doll collector, and a mostly out-of-box doll collector at that, is the money. They want to follow the money. They want numbers and they want them now. People have asked me things like, what's the most I've ever spent on a doll? Or which one of my dolls is the most valuable? Which one I would save in a house fire? Knock wood. And I get it. If you aren't in this world, I'm sure it probably all seems a bit mystifying. People's minds immediately begin swirling with questions of rarity, or value. They assume I have a financial interest in this hobby. They assume I'm wheeling and dealing, trading, auctioning, and profiting from this whole experience. Because to them, there would be obvious value in that, financial value in that. And as an adult, that assumption totally makes sense. Because for many of us grown folk, securing our financial future is a pretty big goal. It's a highly motivating endeavor that probably colors most of our perceptions about things, especially things we don't understand. And it can often serve to be a shorthand for rationalizing those things that we don't immediately understand. Because look, I am a bald, middle-aged white man in America. So they understandably think, oh, well, he must profit from this. Or maybe that it's like a financial investment later on down the road. But that doesn't tell the whole story, or really any part of my story as a doll collector. Because as a financially independent, hardworking, tax-paying, home-owning citizen, my doll collecting has nothing to do with any of that. Any intersection between my dolls and financial profit is completely unintentional. It's not a motivation for me. It isn't a consideration when I'm on the hunt for new plastic pals to add to my collection. I'm never thinking, oh, I can make money off this gal someday. This doll is going to be worth a ton in 20 years. You're the royal 16-year-old daughter of a king. You won't be able to relate to all this grown folk financial talk. And you shouldn't have to. Anyway, I can't tell you how many times people have been horrified that I unboxed a doll that had them seeing dollar signs. Do you guys love that I'm using a Monster High brush on a Disney princess? Anyway, my initial reaction to those kinds of things when people get upset about like my doll opening or their perceived waste of my money is I find myself always trying to assuage their remonstrations. Over the years, I have kind of developed various scripts for my doll collecting scenarios. Isn't she pretty? Can you believe this doll is $11? I mean, I know she's not like super high quality with like a molded top and this cheap little skirt, but she's pretty, right? Anyway, if you're an adult doll collector, particularly a male adult doll collector, you know what script I'm talking about because you probably have them too. I'll immediately say something like, oh, don't worry, I always keep the boxes. Or I'll say something like, don't worry, she's always kept in a dark, windowless, smoke-free room with no sunlight where her integrity will be preserved long after humanity is gone from this planet and visiting alien civilizations will find her amongst the human rubble for millennia to come. And when I do that, they often look relieved. Because those prepared scripts accomplish what I believe to be a very distinct result. The script validates their assumption that I have a financial stake or a financial interest in this hobby, which then allows them to stop thinking about it. It allows them to not have to overanalyze it. Because if they're confronted with the truth that my collection isn't financially motivated, then they often immediately become uncomfortable. They can't compute why it is that a grown man would be doing this. And in their mind, they immediately begin to fill in the blanks. And it isn't pretty. Not like you, dear. Because when you remove the question of collecting for profit, people have often told me that they find it creepy or weird that I'm an adult male who collects dolls. Don't worry, they're criticizing me, not you. I want to make that clear. And I'd like to think that I'm enough of a realist to have a healthy dose of awareness about such criticism. In fact, I've almost come to expect it. I've been in line at stores and the cashier ringing up one of my dolls will say something like, "Oh, this is going to make some little girl very happy." Because they take one look at the overweight middle-aged man buying it and just decide that it's a charming gesture for some imaginary child in my life. They're charmed at the thought of a single father just out shopping alone for his precious little girl, because that's the narrative they've invented during our 2-minute and 17-second interaction, and it makes them feel good. But I don't have children. This doll is for me. And I've gone back and forth in my responses in case you're wondering. Sometimes I'll say, "Yep, sure is," and just agree with their assumption. And then other times I'll look them square in the eyes and say, "Oh no, she's for me." Kind of just depends on my mood. But the thing that's always just out of reach for them, the thing that they would never in a million years deign to consider, is the truth. When I was a little kid, all I ever wanted were dolls. I don't know the reason why, but I also don't know that it needs to have a reason why. Because if you boil everything down to the most basic description, I was a kid who wanted a kid's toy. That's it. Seems simple enough, right? I mean, at least to my mind as a little kid it did. Well, it wasn't. And that wasn't the experience that I wanted or even really deserved. And we don't need to go into detail here, but if you can just imagine being a little boy in the early 90s in small town America who wanted nothing more than to play with dolls. It wasn't pretty. So what do? You grow up and you forget, or at least you try to, but you just aren't wholly satisfied. It didn't pan out the way you would have liked, right? But it's over, right? Childhood gone. So you let it go. Because at a certain point you reach the age where people naturally stop playing with toys anyway, so then the whole thing just ends up feeling like a wash. But every now and then, when you're doing your weekly grocery shopping, you take a little detour and go wandering down the doll aisle. And it's weird because you feel nostalgic, but you're nostalgic for an experience that you never had. You're nostalgic for the childhood that you never had. It kind of feels an awful lot like being homesick. I don't know, that's the best way I know how to describe it. You feel homesick and maybe also a little bit ashamed. So you don't linger too long. You buy your groceries and you head home. So how did I go from there to here with all of these dolls? How did I go from my doll aisle shame to sitting here and talking about them incessantly on YouTube? Baby steps, that's how. As I grew older, friends of mine started having children. Some of them had little girls. And it was fun to go and buy dolls for those little girls. And it was fun to make sure that I always kept a few dolls at my place for those little girls for when they would come and visit and would need something to do while the grown-ups were talking. I would tell people that I had all these dolls to occupy the children in my life while the adults were visiting. Just another script to ease people's minds. And then those kids grew up and some of them moved away, some of them have gone off to college, but ultimately they're off living their beautiful young lives and I'm so proud of them. But then what do I do with all of their dolls? Well, I gave some of them away, which now I kind of regret because a lot of them were like Gen 1 Monster High dolls. But I'm sure they made some little girl very happy at the time, so what are you gonna do? But for any dolls that I had left over, I could write a new script. I could say I kept them out of sentimentality. I could say I kept them because I loved the memories that I had of watching the little girls in my life playing with them at my house. I could say maybe these little girls might want them back someday. So, you know what, I'll just hold on to them for you. And that seemed like a reasonable excuse as to why I had these dolls. But then 3 things happened in a relatively short time span that completely changed my mind. Dare I say even healed my mind. And I'm going to give them to you quickly because if you're still here after all of my rambling, then I admire your stamina, but I don't want to torture you. So I'll wrap up soon, I promise.
I have a point, I promise.
Then make it.
In 2018, I bought my first home, and suddenly I wasn't transient anymore. I wasn't living in apartments on top of roommates. I wasn't moving every 6 months. I had a stable home with plenty of room to spare. What could I possibly fill up all of those rooms with? I had a small handful of dolls at the time, like I said, left over from my friends' children's childhoods, but I still hadn't fully embraced the full collector potential within. Though I do remember the very first doll that I ever got after buying my house. This guy. I encountered him one day out in the wild when I was out grocery shopping and I was doing my little detour down the doll aisle. And on a whim, I just scooped him up. I don't know if I was just feeling very grown up at that time, which ironically led to me buying a doll. But having just bought my first house, I was feeling very self-assured, so I thought, screw it. I'm a grown man with a mortgage. If I want to give myself permission to buy a doll, then that's what I'm going to do. So he came home and joined my tiny but mighty secret little stash of dolls that I had acquired over the years. Then we all know what happened in 2023. You can go back to your post. In 2023, the Barbie movie came out. And don't worry, I won't spend too much time waxing on about the profound effect that that movie had on me. So I'll just say that it grabbed me by the hand and helped to pull me out of my doll collecting shell. Mostly because it made the adult doll collecting world visible to me in a way that I had never seen before. Suddenly, grown people, men and women and everybody in between, were publicly embracing their doll collecting in a way that really inspired me. And that, finally, led me to discovering the adult doll collecting community on YouTube. And after that, I was unstoppable. I kicked open my Barbie Dreamhouse closet doors and started scooping up dolls like there was no tomorrow. Probably much to the alarm of the people in my life. I don't think they saw it coming. But I didn't care. I was a man possessed. I wanted dolls and I wanted them yesterday. I wanted all of the new dolls. I wanted dolls from my childhood that at the time I wasn't even allowed to want, let alone to actually possess. I consumed doll videos on YouTube. And as my collection grew, I found myself wanting to join the conversation. I wanted to talk about dolls too. In my daily life, I have lots and lots of lovely, beautiful, wonderful people and friends and loved ones, but none of them are doll collectors. They love me and they think my dolls are cool, but they don't necessarily share my interest. So who do I talk to when I'm excited about my latest doll procurement? You. I'm talking directly to you. And for the most part, when it comes to YouTube, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I've only been doing this now for like less than a year. And maybe like many of you, I didn't exactly grow up with YouTube. It wasn't a thing when I was young. So I feel like my channel is just constantly under construction. But you know, that's okay, I don't care. Originally, my original idea was that I could have a channel that combined my two great loves, dolls and books, hence the name, the Barbie Book Boy. But that wasn't really working. It was a lot of work trying to combine the two, and I wasn't really having fun. I don't know, I might try to figure that out later. But for now, I've pretty much just been focused on my plastic pals here. And I'm having fun. And that's probably why my collection seems so random. That is why these two cheap little Playline dolls are totally for me. Because my doll collecting kind of inhabits two different worlds. There's the grown-up version of me that collects certain dolls for their creativity or their craftsmanship or their artistry. And then there's the collector in me who knows of a little boy way back in 1991 who would have done anything just for the opportunity to have one of these dolls. It would have made his entire world just to have one, just one. And that little boy doesn't care about profit or rarity or collector items or the secondhand market or articulation or face sculpts or face screenings. And that's who these gals are for. So don't worry, I'm still very much in tune with that little boy. I can reach back through the chasm of time, take him by the hand and drag him into my doll dreamland. Even with my bills and my blood pressure and my home repairs and doom scrolling the news and my morning cup of coffee and all the crap that comes along with navigating life as a grown-up. I'm still just a kid wanting to play with dolls. And maybe, just maybe, there's another doll enthusiast somewhere out there watching these little videos of mine. And if that person is in a safe place, they might feel inspired to finally give themselves permission to embark on their very own doll collecting journey. And that thought makes both me and the little kid still very much alive and well within me very happy. So there you have it, my very long and rambling reason as to why I am a doll collector, even of these cheap little Playline girls. Because while I realize I am not their intended consumer, not being an actual child and all, they are absolutely for me. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I liberated yet more plastic pals from their cardboard cages. I'm going to be doing these little doll reviews weekly. I guess this one doesn't really count as a doll review. I don't even think we talked about these girls. But anyway, if this is your thing, then stay tuned. I promise the future videos won't be so tangential. Or at least I promise to try to keep them light and fun. I don't know, we'll see. Stay tuned. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go beg forgiveness on my hands and knees for basically spending an entire video calling these two cheap. Wish me luck. Bye!